Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the World Chess Championship 2023. In the absence of Magnus Carlsen, we've got Jan Nepomniachtchi from Russia and Ding Liren from China. First game was a draw. Second game went to Jan Nepomniachtchi with a fantastic game with the black pieces, so he leads the early match 1.5 to half. It's a best of 14, so if you get 7.5 points, you are crowned as the world champion. If it's 7-7, then we have a playoff. No further intro today. Welcome back to the channel. If you're a returning viewer, if you for some reason clicked on this and it's your first chess video, give it a chance. It's a beautiful game. So in the first game, if you'll remember, Jan went e4. It was e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. It was all this good stuff. a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castles, bishop e7. And then Jan surprised everybody on move 6 by taking Ding's knight. Now, none of that, and I mean literally none of that, happened to start game 2 because I have an eyelash in my eye. That's number 1. And, oh god, this is so annoying. I have to get it out of here because I don't want to restart this recap. Jan surprised everybody and played d4. This is fascinating stuff. This is very interesting stuff. So it worked really well for Jan when he played e4. And let's not forget, Jan is a lifelong e4 player, okay? And then all of a sudden, even though it works, he chooses not to engage in any type of warfare in e4. And he says, Ding, what do you have for me? And Jan is able to do this because he's, second ranked chess player in the world. He can do whatever he wants. But also, he wants to poke and prod and see what what Ding has for him. Now, again, at the high level of chess, folks are going to be playing knight f6. And nowadays, it sounded like somebody crashed into something outside. It's a very exciting recap. Nowadays, everybody after c4 is playing e6. e6 to try to play either Queen's Gambit declined if white plays knight f3. In fact, this was the position reached in game 2 after the first couple of moves. Or if knight to c3, bishop to b4. Now, Jan is not a d4 player. Of course, he's a fantastic player, so he can play whatever he wants. But he plays knight c3 on the third move, which is a very, very pointed statement. Why? I mean, I don't, right? Like, us chess players, we're such nerds. He moved his knight out to c3. Oh my, oh dear, oh my land, oh my. Like, the reason why the move knight c3 is so interesting is Jan is forcing Ding to play a Nimso. He says, play the sharpest line and enter my territory. Let's go, all right? It's like when in a mixed martial arts fight, a guy just lays on the ground because he's better at jiu-jitsu. He's like, come into my open guard. That might not mean anything to you, but that's the point. He's like, play the Nimso, Ding. And then here, Ding did something absolutely wild, okay? I just realized, by the way, that timestamps are not working. Well, I will just keep you updated of their time. For some reason today, the timestamps just decided to not function. Okay, terrific. Well, we had 2 days of the time working. Now we don't. In any case, the time obviously should be working, but sadly, okay, well, such is life. Time was not a huge factor in this game. That's not really much of a spoiler, but they both had a lot of time. Bishop b4 pins the knight to the king. But instead of that, Ding played d5. Now that's weird. Because if you're going to play knight f6 and e6, you might as well, in this position, play the Nimso. Or you should play d5 because you're going to get the exact same position. So this move order is considered inaccurate because you could have just played the Nimso Indian. So it's a very interesting thing here that Ding says, I'm not comfortable playing into a Nimso against, I don't know what he's going to play. Or maybe, I don't know, there's psychological warfare. I don't know. But he plays d5. And the reason why this is considered inaccurate is white hasn't actually played knight f3, so white can take and play what's known as the exchange variation of the Queen's Gambit decline, which is just considered a little bit better for white. So it's already kind of interesting to see, like, Ding has made another big concession. I mean, he's effectively said, like, I don't want to play into the Nimso, We're not playing into any Nimso. Bishop G5. Which, you know, honestly, when I saw this, I was like, that's not a good sign. I mean, why are you starting with the Nimso move order, but you're claiming you don't want to play Nimso? It's very interesting, right? So it's like, oh, I'm going to do this. And they're like, all right, so do it. And you're like, listen, I was just, you know, excited. Okay, so C6, right? This is a very common idea. Strengthen the center. If take, the queen can take, and it doesn't matter. Pawn's defended. White plays E3. And the reason this entire thing is considered slightly advantageous for white without putting the knight on F3 is because historically, what will happen is white will put the knight on E2, which is very interesting. I mean, this is stuff you just don't know. You know, if you just mostly consume the YouTube shorts or TikTok or whatever, right? Like you don't know, and now you're learning. You're learning that in the Queen's Gambit exchange variation, white likes to put the knight on E2 and then play F3 and E4 and get a big center. Look at that, you just learned something. How many of you just learned that? Incredible. So H6, Bishop H4. This is always considered useful for black. Keeps the options of G5 and various trades. Black now blocks the pin with the bishop. White develops the bishop to D3. Black castles, and white plays Queen C2. As I told you, Jan is very, very, very familiar with the intricacies of the position. And he plays Queen C2. Ding plays the move Rook E8 because the rook is going to be more useful on the E file when everything moves. White plays Knight E2, and now white is going to play F3 and E4. And life is going to be good. Now, another reason black plays Rook E8 is so that when he plays the move Knight D7, Knight F6 and Knight G6 and Knight E6 are possible, and also the queen side is supported. Now, one more thing. You will notice that black has struggled to develop this bishop. That is another point of why there is no knight on that square, because if you tried to develop your bishop to G4, it would be a horrible mistake, because I would go here, and then you would need to go back. And then your bishop would be a target, and you would have kickstarted some attack for me. So there's no reason to do that. And again, bishop E6, kind of the same thing. Like, I'm going to go get your bishop and just be slightly better. So Rook E8, Knight D7, and then here, historically, the move that's been played is the move F3. And people like to play F3 before they castle, all right? And what black will do oftentimes is black will, for example, if black attacks this pawn, this bishop comes back, and now white is completely equipped to play E4. And if white gets to play something like, you know, DE4 and so on, he will be happy. You have to prepare this. You cannot rush it because there is Knight G4, but that's sort of the idea. Like, for example, maybe you play G4, H3, and then E4. Maybe you play long castle or something, and then you can play for G4. But this is kind of like the point. You have a rock-solid formation. Your knight is, you know, not on the F3 square, and it's on the E2 square instead, where it can potentially go behind certain pawns. And this is sort of the idea. In this particular case, maybe you don't play E for E4, you play for G4, H4, but the point still stands. Like, that is like what you are trying to achieve, is the move E4. In some cases, you can go here and play G4, H4, but that's the idea, all right? Now, in the game, Nepo castled. The reason he castled is because recently after F3, top-level players have been playing B5, and actually black has been kind of okay. Because this traditional idea of playing E4 just runs into B4 when your center is destabilized, and if you can't play the move E4 and you just castle, it's like, all right, well, I've always got this lurking. So he castles. Now is where things start to get really weird in this game. Ding does not play B5 or Knight F8 or any of like these moves. Ding plays the move A5, which is an extremely rare move, but it's an extremely rare move that Ding himself has played recently. And the idea, I guess, is not commit anything and just take some space. Just take some space. He's letting me take the space. I will take the space. Now, white has a few ways of responding here. White in the Queen's Gambit declined exchange has something called a minority attack possibility. It's 3 pawns versus 4 pawns. And because you have a pawn minority, you can try to play A3 before B5 and so on and so forth. So that's exactly what he does. Now, Ding plays officially the only game in the database. The combination of A5 and Knight H5 trying to trade these pieces is what Ding plays. And now the only game remaining in the database, except the one that's currently happening, is Anish Giri, Ding Liren, played online in 2022. So Ding has Nepo exactly where he wants him, in something that he's completely comfortable seeing. Wait. Or maybe Jan has Ding exactly where he wants him, because maybe Jan prepared and analyzed that entire game. Both players made it to this position, 26 total moves, and Jan has found his way into something that Ding has already played before. He plays Rook E1. That is exactly what Anish Giri did. Knight F8, opening the bishop and preparing to reroute the knight back into the center. That is exactly what Ding did in that game. Knight C1, that is exactly what Anish Giri did in that game. Now we have knight back to F6, F3, and as I said, the move E4 is prepared. You give black one dead move, white is completely winning. Like, white is just breaking through. So, with that looming, Ding needs to prevent the move E4. He chooses not to focus on the square that's controlled 5 times by white's pieces. He chooses to control that. And he plays knight A6, which is exactly what he did in his game against Anish Giri. Now, knight to E2. All right? Now, I think knight E2 was a novelty. I think Anish Giri played queen F2. So, defending the pawn via diagonal. All right? And in that game, Ding had no problem. So, officially on move 17, we have a brand new position. And Ding Liren fires back at the center with the move C5. The knights stabilize the pawns, and black is fighting back despite not having as much good development as white. White has moved every piece already. Black has not moved 2 of his pieces. Now, the move C5, of course, would love to play C4. So, for instance, if black can successfully play something like C4 and B5, B4, he'll be very happy. So, in this position, Jan does not take the pawn on C5. He plays bishop B5. He has a lot of other moves. For example, here the computer was giving knight F4, immediately trying to give more pressure onto this pawn on D5. If you take on F4, of course, you are just opening problems for yourself. And in this position, it is not a good idea to trade the queen for the 2 rooks. Why is it not a good idea to do this? You're far behind in development. I will take on C5. That's not any good. So knight F4 is a very interesting possibility. And it could have led to a position where Jan had some meaningful pressure on the E-file. Another option instead of knight F4 was to potentially just keep the tension in the center with the move queen D2. But bishop B5 is what Jan chose in the game, attacking the rook. And Ding Liren still does not trade bishops and plays rook D8. He still has not moved his bishop. So maybe now there is a threat to lock this bishop out of the territory. So now Jan took on C5, queen takes C5, and defended his center with the move queen D2. Now here there was a very interesting moment. Ding could have probably just played D4. Like, we've been talking about this the entire game. I mean, his pawns are a little bit suspicious if he's able to push them forward. We're going to get knight D4, E D4, Queen D4, Rook D4, and this is probably just an easy draw. Although, of course, black is still a little bit behind in development, and, you know, yeah, it's never too late to do something stupid and lose. Not at their level, but, again, like, black can't just rush and lose the pawn. So that is one thing, but Ding did not do that. Ding did not play D4. He played bishop D7, and then found this really nice idea to take with the knight. The point is, you cannot take D5. If you play queen takes D5, I'm gonna get this, and even though material is equal, black is just better. Black is more active. This is now stupid, because this was supposed to support a center. There is no center. So, knight takes D7, and Ding Liren is better with black. What? Ding Liren has a better position after 20 moves with black. I mean, you talk about bulletproof Queen's Gambit decline preparation. So Jan puts his knight in the center. The problem is, you're better in the Queen's Gambit declined, which, it's like, you know, even though you are a touch better, it's so solid. It's so solid for white. And Ding plays knight B6. So keeping the tension here and trying to put his knight on c4. And just so you understand how fascinating chess is, like, watch what happens to the eval if white makes this exchange. It goes from 0.1, right, to like it's gonna get a little bit bigger, 0.4. Like, the evaluation actually quadruples for black in black's favor, unless white tries to like fiend for a queen trade. Okay, now Stockfish is trying to make me look like an idiot. But essentially what I'm trying to say is, at the newbie level, we really take for granted like how every move matters. You cannot just improve your opponent's pawn structure for no reason. Now your opponent is looking very happy, pressure on the c file. I thought it would be something like minus 0.5, but okay, Stockfish is not as impressed with this as I am, but the point that I'm trying to make is you cannot just rush into every exchange. Now Ding is going to play knight c4 and he's going to play b5. Jan has to defend himself. So Jan plays rook d1, knight c4, and puts the queen on f2. And this is actually Ding's kind of biggest advantage of the game. I mean, it's only minus 0.3, but he's done an extremely good job here. And he plays rook c8. And now rook c8 applies pressure to this knight. There is a tactic knight a3 and knight b2. So for instance, knight takes b2, queen c3, and white's position completely falls apart. So a very tense moment in the game, right? And Jan really is struggling to defend himself here. He plays knight a4, which attacks the queen and defends the pawn on b2. And Ding has to retreat to e7 or to a7. He retreats to e7. The pressure is still mounting. The pressure building on the queen side. b5 is on the way. We have rook e1. And now in this position, the computer wanted Ding to either play queen e8 and then try to go for tactics with knight a3 and then all of this. Queen e8 is a very interesting move. Or to play knight takes d4, invite this, and play queen f6 or queen d6 and say, my knight is better than your knight and I have b5, okay? So the computer wanted queen e8 or it wanted knight takes d4. Ding instead plays queen f6 with pressure on the knight and b2. Jan plays knight b5. And suddenly Ding realizes he messed up. Why did he mess up? Well, if black just wastes a move, white comes back and suddenly d5 is under fire and it's very hard to protect. And if you try to repeat moves, like, you try to say, oh, well, queen e7, I'm gonna start attacking you. And then maybe f4, f5, f6. So Ding needed to play queen e8 or knight takes d4. By playing this, he allows Jan to immediately find knight b5, creating this opportunity to reroute back to c3. And now, knight c7 offering a trade, knight d4 back, knight e6, knight b5, knight c7, knight d4, knight e6. And the players did what's called a threefold repetition. In chess, you can make a draw by stalemate. You can make a draw by offering and agreeing and accepting. You can also make a draw by repeating the position or the moves back and forth 3 times. Why did Jan do this? Because he has nothing better. He's been under pressure for the last couple of moves and he doesn't have any advantage from the opening and he's leading in the match, so he really doesn't mind. Why did Ding do this? Because he made an inaccuracy from a better position by playing the move queen f6. Suddenly he lost all of his advantage, and if he continues to try to play for a win instead of adapting to the situation that is now in front of him, he might get into a worse position because knight c3 is going to put meaningful pressure on this pawn, and the pressure on the queen side is actually gone because the knights are suddenly defending each other. That is one of the reasons Ding Liren needed to play queen e8, to prevent this knight from coming to b5, to play b5 himself, and he didn't. And he might actually be upset with himself because he was better with black. He was better with black. And a couple of takeaways. Even though he played a bad move order, he still got an excellent position, which really begs the question, why is he not playing just the standard Queen's Gambit declined, right? Like d5. But he does it this way instead of playing a Nimso. So fascinating stuff. I mean, is he going to play a Nimso later in the match? Is Jan going to be like, all right, d4 didn't work. I'm only going to play e4 now. I don't know. But the match is now 2-1. This was not the most eventful game, but the truth is this was a big moment because Ding had his game with the fewest amount of problems. And even though Jan won a very, very nice game 1, he went completely away from playing e4. So Maybe Ting is going to get back into the match after this. This was a very good stabilizing game. It's 2-1. And I'll see you for game number 4. Now get out of here.